pull up.
Right. Okay, so we are live. We're not sure what time we originally settled it for, but this is the time it's going on. It's like
it's all Greyman's fault.
It's all my fault. It was going to be well. I normally do on Wednesdays, but it doesn't make a difference as long as I get to chat with all interesting people from the comic community at some point or another. And when I finish with the last one, I'll move on to the first one again. I'll go all the way around. So basically, it's comic memories, and the idea is that you show like 5 comics that have been really got memories for you, or just show what you like, really. But normally about 5.
Show 5 actual comics. Oh man,
that was the idea. Yeah, I wasn't sure if we actually spoke. There's another thing. Like, I thought you might have watched some of the other ones I've done, but I wasn't too sure if you had.
I did watch. You know, the last one I watched. The last one I watched was Knights of Old.
That was only recent. Yeah. And
he didn't do any comic. He just sort of stream of conscious, threw out a lot of comics, and
that's right. Yeah, that's how he wanted to do it.
He didn't pick 5 comics to dwell on.
No, that's true. But that's good. It doesn't make a difference really, as long as we go for just have a chat.
I'll probably
for a bit.
Not be able to do that since I'm discombobulated and barely got here for this, but it's all good.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You just show some comics, and you can tell me. We'll probably end up educating me about them. So I dare say you're going to pull out some comics that are like I have no knowledge of. You know,
it's funny because I thought about this, and the reality is, you know, the comics people attribute to me are not my big comic memories, though.
No, that's true.
Yeah, I'm a 70s boy. My comic memories are probably closer to your comic memories and Roger's comic memories.
Yeah.
You know, for comics that really, really spoke to me, it's what I read, which I'm not 85 years old. So or 65, you know.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll hear about your journey when we start talking about how you got into start buying more older comics. You know, I think a lot of, I'm buying older comics than I ever used to. Like, and I kind of kick myself. I didn't do it a long time ago. So it's only when I recently came back into the hobby that I started buying older comics. It used to be my comic was just whatever came out that month. Literally, I'd buy whatever came out that month. A few times I'd go into my comic shop and I'd pick up a few older ones. I managed to pick up a few older ones on the way, but I wish I'd done it a lot more seriously. Like when I was working and younger and had less overheads and more ready cash kind of thing, but
your story is everybody's story at this point.
It's just like there's no point.
Don't get me wrong, I feel blessed. I have lots of great comics, but if I'd been smarter about it, I'd have, anybody could speculate what they would have done if they had been instead of buying the most recent Liefeld comic, just put that aside and actually buy some Silver Age comics or even Bronze Age comics. But the retrospectoscope, as we call it, is a dangerous one.
I've not heard that one before. They say hindsight is 20/20.
Yes, indeed.
My mate likes to say, if ifs and buts were pots and pans, it'd all be tinkers, is what he says.
Right. I mean, if you could go back in time, you often think, I'll buy these comics, and then you're like, well, I'll buy Google. And Apple and blah, all sorts of. You could
lots of shares in lots of stuff. And then would you remember? We'll just start talking about your comics and your memories of your comics. Would you remember when your first comic? When, where, what?
I do remember my first comic. As a matter of fact, I could just grab that real quick. So entertain the crowd for 2 seconds.
All right, then. So, hi everybody. Welcome to Comic Memories with Man Cave. He's not that ready. He's not as prepared as he could be. But apparently, I've got to do a song while he's looking for his comic. But I think next week we've got Jambo's coming on, and I've got a few people sort of in advance. If anyone watches this and they want to come and do a comic memories with me sometime, then get in touch. I'm booked up to end of March at the moment, so not going too bad. And also don't forget to check in for Cover Slingers tomorrow. Cover Slingers, Man Cave are back on my channel tomorrow, along with Jambo, along with Bill from Comic Mags Musings, Capin Comics, and of course the judge, she who must be obeyed and feared, Matilda Gothica, will be here, and that's going to be about 2 hours ago to tomorrow. So like it's 9 o'clock now, almost. So it'll be 7 o'clock tomorrow. So whatever the time zone it is for you now, take 2 hours off it, and that's when we'll be live. I think it's about 1 or 12 or 2 or something like that in America. But flashing up lots of comic books. We kind of like, we was going to do this Wednesday. Then Man Cave realised he couldn't do it, so then we set it for today. But then we was trying to work out the time, and because he was saying he wanted to do it early, I thought you meant it ended up. I thought it was going to be 4 p.m. my time, but it wasn't. It's 4 p.m. Man Cave's time. I'm not sure. I could start showing you some comics that I was going to show off on Sunday's video.
I'm almost there, Gray.
He's almost here. He's almost here. Yeah, Jambo should be quite fun as well. I hope Jambo's got his comics ready next week. Jambo, start getting your comics ready now, mate. I can only entertain with nothing to say or show for so long. I don't know. How about if I try hypnotizing everybody? I'm going to try. Yeah. Do not look away. Follow the keys. You are very interested in this stream. All right, so I think we're okay again.
Come on, Gray. You're used to yapping and then doing your thing by yourself.
Well, yeah, but that's when I've got something to show off, though. So I've got something to show off. It's easier.
So I actually am blessed enough to remember the very first comic I ever bought. Well, that was ever bought for me in this case.
Yeah.
It was probably around the time 1975, so I was young.
Yeah.
And my mother's best friend and her kids who are my age, she took us to Rexall Drugs in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a drugstore near bowling alleys to frequent. And she's like, get a comic. And I was like, I don't even know what a comic was. But being a fan of dinosaurs, I saw one with some dinosaur on it. So my very first comic happened to be a #1, too, which this isn't it. But I bought this later. This is Tour #1, Kubert.
Cool.
I didn't know the artist, of course. But
nah.
So it had what we called a brontosaurus back then on the top.
Yeah.
Now, I think I actually did a video on this, but I doubt anybody watched it, so no worries.
I think we'll find they're back to being brontosauruses again because they were.
What's that?
I think it's back to being a brontosaurus again.
Yep.
Because at one point they decided it wasn't an actual dinosaur because it was already part of another dinosaur. Then they decided it was different enough from that dinosaur to be its own dinosaur. Are you tearing open a slab there, or?
Yeah, I just busted that sucker out. So
really, just to show it off?
I haven't read it in a while. It was a 9.8, but even this as a 9.8 is worth $30. So
right, yeah.
No, I just did that for Roger. Roger, that was my big dramatic stunt. I was planning on taking it out anyway. So I just and for Matilda.
That was easier. That was easier than I thought you would be to open up a slab. Did you already have it half open, or are they weaker than they look?
What's that? This one I knew had a little bit of a opening there. It's an old case, so I just got my fingers in there, yanked it apart, and ripped it open. They're not all easy that you can't do it that way. Knights of Old, who you had on, did a much more eloquent. He disentombs or exhumes comics periodically, but it's actually it's not an amazing comic, but it was a comic book, and it introduced me to everything. And rereading it later, it's nothing particularly profound. He's fighting more of the tribes and the humans than the actual person, but. Tor, which was originally from the 1950s, which I do have his original run from the St. John's comics in 1950s. But yeah, this is the very first comic I ever bought.
Cool.
And it got destroyed within 3 months of my having it, but I remembered it very well.
Well, from reading constantly or just through childish misuse?
Yes. Oh yeah. I keep my valuable comics in slabs. You all know that. But if you look at my history, it's not one of preservation of comics. So I bought a lot of comics as a child. My mother was all about learning how to read, and I did not like school. My brother, younger than me, great student, absolutely didn't have to be coaxed. For me, school was not to be taken lightly. It was the charge of the light brigade for me. I was going to fight it till the last breath. And my mother was the cannons to the right of me and the cannons to the left of me. You know what I mean? She was.
And they dragged you in screaming, did they? Did you ever curl up a comic and hit your brother over the head with it?
I don't think so. I just punched him in the face with my fist.
I think I prefer to be hit with a comic, rolled up comic, to be honest. But fair enough. You
mess around. We're from the country, in New Mexico. But So she bought comics for us, man. I hear when I refer to Knights of Old because I just watched his thing with you.
Yeah.
How his mom wouldn't buy him comics, and his, he didn't. My parents did well, and if it made me read, she bought me comics. So I was like the comic kingpin of my grade, and people knew this, so I would lend them out. We would often go to the Rio Grande River just to hang out. I'd bring all my comics with me, a good 100 or 200 comics, and sort them out on the ground next to the beach. So you can imagine what that does in the hot
in the sand. Sun. Oh my God. Yeah. So, unless you do those things, you don't learn your lesson, do you?
Yes.
It's a hard lesson to learn sometimes, but
that's right. But I loved it. It gave me the love of comics. If I hadn't had that, who knows? And my mom would regale me with stories of, she loved comics too. So her favorite comics growing up, and she was in the 1940s, probably more mid to late 40s, but so she didn't have any of the really good stuff. But she loved Captain Marvel, Shazam, Black Knight, funny enough. I mean, Black Hawk.
Oh yeah.
Little Lulu and Plastic Man. Those I heard about those guys all the time.
Have you got any of her old comics, or she never saved them?
No, those are long gone. And
that's a shame.
Her sister, who's 8 years older than her, born in 1932, purportedly had all Batman, Superman, it's one of those golden age stories because she's born in 32.
Yeah.
You can only imagine what comics she had. She actually kept them, but her husband, who we don't speak his name anymore, in the 1950s said, you're an adult now. You got to get rid of your comics. So she got rid of, I don't know how she got rid of them. I never got to really grill her about it. I only heard this from my uncle, and it may be a bit of a mythical story for all I know, but regardless, she was at the right age to have some.
It might have only been a handful. Just try and take yourself. It was a small handful of comics. That's all it was. It wasn't a full set of Batman or a full set of action comics. It was just a tiny little handful.
Those stories are abound, and that's why Golden Age comics are so damn expensive because no one kept them. But certainly, it hurts you to think about it. Not that I would have had any of those comics at this point, but my cousins would have certainly been better off.
Yeah. Well, you would. I knew you would have been. I mean, it's just the thought of like they've gone out of the family. It'd be nice to have them in the family, just so you could look at them. You go and visit your family, maybe let you have a read of them or something like that. But I always thought that I was quite good with my comic books. I'm sure I never had any like bags and balls. I didn't remember ever seeing bags and balls or proper comic boxes. But I think I had a shelf, or I had a shoe box or something. But I never used to get loads. But when I look at my old comics I remember having as a kid, they've all got loads of spine ticks in and like spine rolls. So I think to myself, I couldn't look after them that well, but I seem to remember like treating them with reverence kind of thing. But they seem to all be.
Even when I got a little older, one of my favorite things to do is I take all, just like I did them at the beach, like I said, I would take all of my comics and in my room put them in piles, sort them into piles. So all the Superman here, all Batman here, all action comics here, all you name it. I mean, I bought my brother, I should mention, who's 2 years younger than me, he was very much into buying too. So we bought them together. So the only comics we wouldn't buy were girl comics. No, I know Magic Lasso, if you're watching. Yeah. We despised Wonder Woman, and we only tolerated her if she was in the Justice League or Justice Society, but we never bought a comic dedicated to a woman. And I don't think we were misogynists. My mother is about the most liberal person I ever knew.
Yeah.
She worked for Head Start.
I was the same.
As a boy, I didn't want anything to do with a female genre comic. So we'd make piles and piles of comics, and didn't have enough room, so I'd be jumping around, landing on the comics, stepping on the comics, falling over. Oh, it was
yeah. So you think you're being good, but lots of accidents happen on the way, kind of thing. But
back then, you pull out a comic that by today's standards would be like a 7.0, and everybody just called it near mint.
Right. Yeah.
I think I heard Highly talking. It's so true. It's like, oh, this is near mint. Near mint.
I've never been that worried about it. As long as I can read the comic, I don't really care. All my Iron Man got lots of spine ticks. I just like to have a full run of them if I can, of various comics. Right. And if I can buy like a stack and they're all, I don't know, corner cut off or something like that, you know, if I can get it for a good price, I'd do it. You know, rather than like waiting to get a high grade in any particular comic. But I'm going to upset Matt Jasso as well. I might have told you when we had our chat before, but I thought Wonder Woman, it's a girl. It's got to be for girls, that comic. So why would I buy it? It's like I wouldn't buy a Cindy doll or a Barbie doll or whatever.
That's right. That's right.
Because, you know,
nothing to do with that.
I didn't mind her if she appeared in another book, though. She appeared in a few JLAs, and it didn't bother me like that. But
if a woman was in the Justice League or to me, the big in DC, I love Justice League of America and the Legion of Superheroes. So you could have as many women on that group as you wanted, as long as there's a bunch of guys there too. I never had a problem, but I wouldn't. Yeah. You know, I would identify more with Ultra Boy and Cosmic Kid than Saturn Girl and Dream Girl. Though.
I think with boys, it's like you want to like what you'd like to be. Like you see a super like big tough super. Oh, I'd love to grow up and be a big tough superhero like that kind of thing. And Wonder Woman, I love the TV show. The TV show was good, and she certainly Linda Carter kind of like it ignited a certain youthful interest in me, which now
that you mention it, though, I had a real appreciation for Linda Carter. That's probably the first female actress that I really appreciated for different reasons than I enjoyed a male, and I appreciated her assets even pre-pubertal.
I don't know if I actually knew what I was appreciating necessarily at that time, but I knew there was a certain interest, and I like the way she spanned for some reason. Oh yeah, she spins. She looks nice when she spins.
100%. And just like you said, identified and the comics I love the most had more superheroes. If they had more superheroes in it, the better. I mean, I like Spider-Man, and as I got older, I love reading Spider-Man more and stuff like that. But early on, if it hit Justice League of America, Avengers, here's a comic that I remember very well buying as
Defenders.
a kid. Love it. Defenders. And I loved it when they were battling other superheroes too. So this comic I remember very much. This isn't the one I got. I bought this years later. The one I originally bought, long gone. But Gil Kane art, I didn't know artists till I was probably in college. I didn't pay attention to artists much.
I still don't know artists.
Yeah. But now I know it's Gil Kane, and looking back, I loved a lot of Gil Kane covered comics. And this was a great comic. They're battling, and Hulk comes up to Submariners and is trying to be nice to him, actually, and Submariner's like, away from me, I don't have time for you, and swats him in the head. And you always know that that's not going to end well with the Hulk. So it becomes a big brawl. So
I've got like loads of comics that I can't remembered reading, and I think, did I ever have them, or did I read like UK reprints of them? And I don't have them anymore. There's like one Defender story I particularly remember with the Mandrill. And like I recently bought the first appearance of the Mandrill in Shadow of the Sea Devil, because I felt really sorry for him. I felt really sorry for him because his mum hated him, and he had the power to control other women's minds, but his mum was evil and cruel to him, and that must have given him a complex. And I just felt so sorry for him.
Nice.
Even though he was a villain.
But one of the reasons I really remember this is because it was really before I was reading them much. I was still sort of more into just looking at superheroes, but later on, so I kept my comics. I stopped really getting into them for maybe a year or two, and then I got back to really collecting and realized I probably trashed most of my original hoard. And but then at about age 12, where I really started appreciating the stories more, my my parents were definitely into different things. Let me just put it to you that way. And they decided it would be a good idea to send my brother and I to boarding school in India. So they packed us up on a plane and sent us off to India for 3 years. So I went to boarding school in India in 1980, in the early 80s. So
why India? You got family back there, or roots?
No family. No? They just knew some other ashram types whose kids were there and thought it would be a good experience. Escape the
was it a hippie kind of thing?
The Maya, they called it, the the things of the United States that made you just like things. And of course, now I love
commercialism
things, but I don't know that it worked.
Capitalism and commercialism and the whatever.
Yeah, commercialism.
Right.
And
it's a more spiritual kind of upbringing in India, was it?
Right. And there was some American adults there to supervise us, but we went to a school that was run by Indians. It wasn't an American thing. We just had a good amount of Americans there. And unfortunately, I don't speak Hindi. They spoke Hindi, but all really good schools in India are English based, because we can thank the English Raj for that, because they conquered the whole world and everybody wants to learn English now. So thank you, Gray Man.
Yeah, I wasn't personally responsible, and there were certain aspects of it that we'd like to forget about. But yeah, it had some, like all things, has some pros and some cons.
Yeah, so you like to forget about it until you're in India and the guys actually do speak a decent amount of English wherever you really need it.
That is handy. That bit is handy. We kind of like sort of scalloped ahead. Like I wanted to sort of get onto when you first started collecting. Like how did you like buy loads of comics? Did you have lots of pocket money and you'd be able to buy pickup lots, or did you work jobs to get them, or did you have a certain character you so concentrated on?
When it came to some things, I didn't get away with anything. When it came to comics, I will 100% admit to you now, Gray Man, I was 100% spoiled rotten.
All right.
Didn't have to work for anything. If my mother thought I was going to read comics, boom. If it kept me off the television, she was cool.
Yeah, that's good.
She was. When it came to comics, it was very. Unless I wanted to buy, every once in a while I would go to. So one of the things I enjoyed doing. So one of the things, again, compared to Knights of Old, he was in San Francisco, which would have been heaven for me because he actually had comic shops. I don't have no comic shops growing up. I had Circle K's, 7-Elevens. Do you know what Circle K is? It's like a convenience store.
Yeah, I had a feeling I'd heard of it.
Any old store that had, drug stores.
Yeah.
Occasionally a newspaper selling store, a newsstand
store. Always sounded like it was named after a cowboy brand, like Circle K. Like it sounds like a cowboy like
probably
brand.
Was. I never thought about that, but you're right. It probably did start out in the West. So I remember my mother would drive me all over because sometimes they wouldn't have. I would miss things in runs because of Circle K. Because either I got there late, I didn't have the chutzpah to actually talk to someone who owned it to set things aside for me or something. No, it was just go in there and look to see what they had and then wander. I remember driving around Albuquerque because I couldn't find something. Like Contest of Champions came out. And for some reason I missed the first one and it drove me nuts. So I remember searching for this freaking comic.
Was that how you collected as well? You was a story completionist, like you wanted to get the full story. Would you buy all the crossovers?
Yeah. Very much different. The way I am now, I go for keys and things that mean something to me. When I was a kid, it was all about volume and having complete sets.
Yeah.
And the Holy Grails was anything with 10 cents had to be worth $1 million as far as I was concerned.
Right.
A 10-center meant it was beyond value. If you had put a Hulk 181 next to me and a 10-cent adventure comics with, the Legion of Superheroes, I would have picked that 10-cent comic 1,000 times. I didn't know, there was nothing about first appearances in my mind.
No.
That and number one. If it was a number one, and that was pure luck that I got this number one, that I was a number one because I was too young to know. But if it was a number one, I mean, that was it. I find it funny that later on, number ones weren't actually considered great by Golden Age comics. They actually started at number 2.
That's right.
Number one meant it hadn't been tried and true, and no one respected it. They would only respect it if it lasted a second comic. There's so many publishers and so much competition back then. So it's funny that number one didn't mean anything back in the Golden Age, but to me in the Bronze Age, and Roger, you tell me if I'm wrong, it was all about the number one, or a 10-center. 12-center was boom. Okay, 12-center was big. 15-center good. This is a 20-center, so that's 25-center. So that's, I wasn't young and buying it early enough to get 20 centers, but it was all about the lower the price, the more valuable the comic.
Right.
But I was a completionist.
Right, but you was already thinking about buying old comics when you first started. You was looking at old comic books, not just what came out that month.
Right. So to find old comics, so as I say, my mother would buy new comics, but I did discover this thing called a flea market at some point. And at flea markets, every once in a while there weren't many comic sellers, so sometimes I'd go up and down those aisles all day long in the hot New Mexico sun and not find a single comic vendor, or maybe one box with nothing in it. But there were 2 or 3 guys there that were there once in a while that had nice comics. And then I had I couldn't just spend $100 to buy it. So I remember finding a comic and going, I really wanted it. And that one I had to earn. And to earn it, I just had to do chores and this and that. It wasn't, I didn't have to go get a job, but I was still, we're talking about, I'm younger than 10 at this point still. I'm not.
Did you learn the art of the haggle from a young age?
I had no idea that you were supposed to haggle or you could haggle. For me, it was just, that's the price, you buy it.
Yeah, and, I'm like that now, to be honest. I very rarely try and haggle.
I'm a great haggler, but searching around, there was one guy who was a Chicano man which means Mexican American. It's the term, but I don't think it's a derogatory term. If it is, I apologize. It wasn't when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And the first time I ever even knew about artists was for this guy, because he's like, hey, you got to get this. It's Jack Kirby, man, Jack Kirby. So he's like, and I don't remember what comic it was. I think it was definitely a DC Bronze comic, but he's like, Jack Kirby, he's the best, man, Jack Kirby. And I remember just like, okay, I'll take it, man. It was, I don't know, I bought it for $2, $3, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I remember the first time I heard this name, Jack Kirby, and I was supposed to be impressed. So I must be impressed with that.
So that was the first lesson.
That's right. And funny enough, years later, I was, as I was a little older, I'm like, I didn't really like Jack Kirby that much, his DC art so much. It took me a little bit to actually really turn around and say I love Jack Kirby, but
yeah, I've heard someone else say that recently. Someone else saying you appreciate it more as you get older. You understand the work, the style, and so forth, the composition and what have you. Yeah, but I was like sort of terrible for because I mean I never had any friends really who bought comic books much. My comic shop owner, when I finally had a comic shop owner, he was useless. He didn't even read the comics. He didn't give a toss. I think his dad opened the shop and he just ran it. So he would never sort of say, "Oh, this is coming, or this is a big book," or anything like that. I never knew anything about spec or keys or anything like that. So until I started doing videos here in 2018 . So I was
how old were you when you started buying comics, Chris?
Oh, I don't remember. I have no idea. I never had that much pocket money. So, I mean, I didn't start buying properly every month until I was actually working, until I was about 18 or something like that. Is when my mum came home and said, "Oh, comic shop just opened up down the road." And I went, "Oh, comics." Because I always collected comics. My dad used to buy me a couple when I go to my dad's every other weekend, and he'll have a few British comics there. Yeah. But I wish I'd just said to him, "Get me freaking superhero comic." Because every time I had some pocket money, I'd go to the shop and pick up a few superhero comics. But I wish I said to my dad, get me these monthly superhero comics instead of getting me these funny books that I'm never going to read again.
So not many people in England bought comics. It wasn't a big.
No, I think there must have been enough, but I just didn't know anybody who did.
Gotcha.
My brothers would read my comics or whatever rather than buy their own. So
in my generation, a lot of people like comics. I mean, comics. My mother was a principal of a school, and there was a kid who wouldn't talk to anybody. His father returned from Vietnam and then left and said, I'm leaving you guys. And it traumatized him, and he would not speak to strangers. Right. She bribed him with comics, and he finally started talking to people just to get comic books. I mean, we love comics. I mean,
the healing power of comics.
Yes. I'll tell you further. When I went to India, the thing that my care packages were comics and food of some sort. It was all about and Dungeons and Dragons stuff. I like Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, so
it was Dungeons and Dragons comics, and I became like this library of comics for India. And there were a lot of Americans there, and they just, hey, let me go through your comics. I'm like, sure. So people would read comics, and I when I left there, I didn't bring them back. It was literally a suitcase full of comics. So I left them at the I gave them to the library at the school. It was a boarding school. So I was told years later that people would still find my comics in the.
They got some good use out of them. They must have quite possibly started the love for comics in quite a few people as well. You never know.
Well, I hope so. Yeah,
it could be like dozens of people around the world still collecting to this day because they read a comic book that was yours at one point.
I remember getting in trouble with one of the older. It was an English prefect system at our school, cockhouse prefects, all that Harry Potter like stuff.
Yeah.
And there was corporal punishment too. English didn't, those English. I don't know if in England you got corporal punishment, but my school,
they got rid of it pretty
you were
quick,
more afraid of the upperclassmen than you were afraid of teachers because they would cane you, they'd smack you.
The actual other students could cane you, could they?
Oh yeah.
No, nothing like that.
Students wouldn't usually cane you, but they would smack. They'd give you one thupper. It's called. It's a smack, and they were significantly bigger, so you had to watch out.
Yeah.
And one of the older Americans, at some point, I wanted to close up shop, and I kicked him out like he wanted to read comics still. So it got me in a lot of hot water because he was upset at me for denying him a comic.
Oh God! Oh well, he was like the comic pusher for the whole place. Did you get them in with free comics to start off with, and then like you start charging for them like as it goes along. Once you got them hooked, it's like, well, I can't give free ones anymore. You haven't got to pay $1 for it.
and I have to show this because if there's one thing I've actually managed to keep, because I recognize they were different, and this is for Roger might appreciate, is I have tons of comics from India. These are made by a company called Amarchita Katha, and they're no joke. They were in Hindi and English, so I bought the English ones, of course. Hundreds of them, and they're all stories of either mythological stories of Hindu mythology or real historical stories about Mughals fighting Hindus or whatever it is. So this is, and it was always a lot of sex and violence, man. They talk about the guy who was enamored with someone and what he would have to go through to get into her good graces. You know what I mean? This is a famous story from the Mahabharat. This is a guy who was kicking butt. And he was so tough, like he was surrounded, and he at the end he had a wheel swinging it around, and they finally killed him. But he killed, they'd always like 1,000 people before he died. And
the legend grows over the years.
Wasn't spectacular, but so these were great. These were actually really fun to read. This is like just a bunch of folk tales.
It looks like Asterix. The style of that one looked kind of Asterix like.
Yeah, Harish Chandra. This is another one. This is an ascetic. He was a king, but he insulted a powerful sadhu and got cursed. So he became poor, and he had to auction off his wife and his kids, and he had to get back into the good graces of the gods. It's a pretty crazy story, and they're very interesting. This guy wanted to kill this Buddhist, and the Buddhist is like, "Go ahead, kill me, and whatever I have is yours." And the guy was so amazed at this guy just not caring that he became a famous saint later, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I have like 100.
Quite a lot. Well, so the thing is, their history goes back a lot further than like our history. Like the Vidus, are they called the Vedras or something like that? They go like 4,000 years. Like
the Sudras. They have a lot of the Mahabharat, and they have a lot of historical stories, but they weren't actually put down on paper till years later. And the original sources aren't there. It was more like Homer's Odyssey. It was much more of a oral tradition until someone finally decided to write it all down. But so I brought those back from India, and they had some cool stuff in India too. They actually had reprints of a lot of Bronze Age comics, and I wish I'd kept some of those because they weren't as big as magazines. They were black and white, but they were stories. And so I remember reading the Count Nefaria Avengers story. In India through Indian comics that were printed in India for reprints for that. And this is in the 1980s. And those are great. Those are great sources as well.
And they were in Hindi, were they?
No. They were in English.
Okay. It's interesting.
Yeah, educated, India is most things are in English because the British Raj. You listen, India has tons of languages. Hindi is a national language, but the reality is only UP, which is a state in the north that's near New Delhi.
That is where they speak Hindi. Uttar Pradesh is something like that. Is it called?
Uttar Pradesh.
Uttar Pradesh.
UTTER. But southern India has a whole set of languages, and there's probably 15 official languages in India. they say to get around all of India, it's better to know English than any one Indian language. Because if you're in southern India trying to speak Hindi, they might actually just stab you for it.
Tamil down there in the south. I know Tamil Sri Lanka, isn't it? Yeah, but, I know Tamil is Sri Lanka. And, who knows?
Sri Lanka is its own country, but they speak Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Gujarati, Maharati, Punjabi, Hindi. There's a whole that's just scratching the surface, and there's probably 10 different dialects of Hindi and Punjabi and everything else. I mean, Pakistan speaks Punjabi, Urdu, and Pashtun, which are all India. They were one country, but they're closer to northern India than northern India is to southern India in culture. So,
it's a pretty vast country. Lots of history and culture and so forth, and architecture and everything, and religions. Quite a few religions. My mom sent me a lot of great comics there, and I have a lot of great comic memories. I have a good mother. She actually sent me this comic, Alien Worlds. Full screen. Okay,
and if you open this, it's pretty risque, man. So my mom either didn't crack it open, or she was like, "My boys are lonely in India. I'm going to send them a little." And I remember the stories. Jambo and I go on about how the art is beautiful. It's what's his name, Dave Stevens' art.
All right.
But the stories are great too. I mean, just really. There's like a praying mantis equivalent where they're like, where are all the guys in this community? And it's an alien community, and they have a really sexy lady there. And next thing you know, the guy just can't help himself, and he goes and has his way, and then she eats him. So,
she eats him. Well, that's awkward. I've got a question here from Captain Comics. I think you should ignore this one. I think he might be taking the mickey here because he obviously wants to know what covers you're showing tomorrow. What's your best Captain cover? I think he's trying to get it.
Forget about it. Forget about it.
We did
the other thing I bought a lot of. I don't know if you had these in England.
I never saw them. Never saw any
creepy, eerie, and I bought Famous Monsters too, which is a very different type of thing. But those were 3 things I loved growing up. So I had a good 2 boxes of creepy, eerie, and Famous Monsters. And just like I had an aversion to Wonder Woman, don't even tell me about Vampirella. I had no interest in Vampirella.
Because she was a girl. I actually bought some Vampirella books, like actual novels, but I never read any of her comic books. But so I've got number 1 now because she's my birthday sister from September 1969.
Yeah.
So that's why I bought her first appearance now. But we never got. I only ever remember seeing DC and Marvel. I don't remember seeing Charlton or anything else other than DC and Marvel back in the day, and certainly no magazines. Lots of.
I bought a lot of Charlton horror too.
Yeah,
good amount of Charlton horror and Charlton War comics. This one I got more recently, but I had some enjoyment reading those stories.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Until I started sort of working and buying them regularly, my comics, like US comic buying, would literally be like maybe every couple of weeks. I'd have a bit of money and I popped around the corner from where my dad lived and maybe picked up 1 or 2 comics. So when I think back of what I had when I was a kid, didn't have that many really, but I always liked them, and and I had a lot of British comics as well.
Here's an original from that survived my childhood. Bring on the Bad Guys.
I think Night Tiger was showing that on his. I think Night
For whatever reason, I actually kept this. I gave, and you can see the
cover seen better days.
but it just has, and so I had a lot of these, which were various stories from the Silver Age.
Yeah.
So to say I've actually read Silver Age comics would be a lie. I haven't read too many, but I've read I've read so many of these kind of things. For the Silver Age and the Bronze Age that I feel like I read them. Like Daredevil number 7 would be another comic that really I just loved it, and it's the first red suit cover, but that's irrelevant. It's beautiful. It's a great story, Wallywood cover, and it's basically Submariner versus Daredevil, and you'd think that would be a 30-second fight, but Daredevil's all heart, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Skill and heart. and he just gives the Submariner such a tough time. He shocks him, he tricks him, he gets a crane ball to smash him, and in the end he's like barely holding on to Submariner's ankle, like, no, I'm not gonna let you go. And Submariner's like, I fought the Hulk, I fought the Avengers, but no one's been as tough as you. And he like just walked off, And,
that's all he's got going for him. He's pluckiness in it, really. I've got to say, when I read like old comics, I try and like not pay attention to the fact that all these things is silly and we couldn't do that. But Daredevil was the hardest one for me, when he just swings that billy club and a thing flies off and suddenly he's jumping out of windows.
Yeah.
As that little thing, it's just not going to work. It's like that, but you've got to forget about that and just don't worry about it. Just enjoy the action. Well, let's go back a bit to a question we got ages ago from Man Cave from Magic Lasso. He wants to know what would be your dream team, 7-member Avengers team. Who would your 7 members, 7-member Avengers dream team be?
Those are always tough questions, but I go with the classics, man. Captain America, Iron Man, Thor. Then it gets a little tricky. Let me think. I loved Wonder Man. I don't know. I like Wonder Man more than most people. And I hear he's actually a spec. I hear he's a spec person now because he might be in some film coming up.
I like Wonder Man. I've got his full run. Yeah, in the 80s.
So let me see. We got those 4. We need a little more power. And now I imagine Magic's asking me based on who's been on the Avengers, though. Granted, pretty much everybody's been on the Avengers, even for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I would probably add someone like Doctor Strange there. I love Doctor Strange, and he has, where Braun doesn't quite do it. One of the reasons I like Defenders is they had some of my favorite people.
I don't remember Doctor Strange ever being in the Avengers.
Has he? He must have been on the Avengers at some point. I can't say it for sure, but everybody's been on the Avengers. Yeah. And he asked for my dream Avengers team, so I'm just going to put him on there.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Because like Magic users, every team kind of needs a Magic user, and it's normally Wonder for Avengers, isn't
going
it?
For the D&D reference, absolutely. Yeah. If you're a bunch of lunkheads, what are you going to do when you fight someone?
Yeah.
And, put on if Silver Surfer were on the Avengers, I'd probably throw him on there too. I don't know if he was though, but I tend to go for brawn over brains. But I feel like you got Captain America and Tony Stark. You got enough brains there for sure.
Yeah, tactics.
If you want to be honest with yourself, is Ant-Man or Hawkeye really going to be all that important once you already have some brains?
They're just making up the numbers, isn't they? Really, just making up the numbers. If you need like a boomerang arrow or something like that, man's your guy, But otherwise,
So speaking of Avengers, though, I love the Korvac series. That's if there's one of the first comics I remember really reading and taking in deeply was the Korvac series.
Is that got Guardians of the Galaxy as well?
A lot of Guardians of the Galaxy. Loved anything that was off the path too. Like if I could find an Inhumans or Guardians of the Galaxy, I was on it and loved this series. Loved the fact that he killed the whole Avengers and then brought him back to life because it was a bit cheesy. It was a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, but I still love that. As a kid, it was just, wow, what a... So I liked a lot of superheroes, and I liked the most powerful. So Galactus was someone that... anything with Galactus, I was a huge fan of, too. Galactus was, to me, the uberest of the uber villains, the Fantastic Four would be trying to fight him, and he'd just be standing there ignoring them. You know what I mean? He's just like, I don't even have to bother with these guys. They have to get an ultimate nullifier to do something. I mean, how he's been presented has been variable over the years, and he sort of has become the cosmic BITCH for various reasons nowadays. But back in the day, and I loved anything Galactus for sure.
But just go back to that Korvac saga when they all died. What was that month like where you were waiting for the next comic to come out? Was you like on tenterhooks wondering how they're all dead? What's going to happen in the next issue? How can it be in it? What was it like?
Because I bought a lot of comics, I didn't necessarily read them right away. I already had like the evolution.
You straight to it.
Yeah. I could like Netflix. I could just be like, but it was sort of after he brought him back to life. It sort of just moved on to the next thing. It really didn't even. Right. It was almost like
didn't hang around.
They didn't sit around there and need a safe space and need psychological therapy after dying. It was like, let's just move on to the next thing.
Yeah, let's get the next fight, the next battle.
Yeah. I don't recall that, but yeah. So so this brings me to one of the comics I really loved as well is What If.
Right.
I loved What If comics, and I think it's number 32 is What If Korvac Had Lived. And that was a great comic for me because not only did you have Korvac, then because he lived, all the big powers came to try to take him down. I have the comic somewhere. I'm sorry, if I was more organized, I could show you the actual comics.
That's cool.
So then Galactus, the Gardener, the In-Betweener, the what's his name? The yellow guy who was the Tribunal, the Living Tribunal.
Living Tribunal,
the Stranger.
Right.
All these guys, and the Watcher gets them all together because the Watcher's worried, and they all try to take on Korvac, and in the end, Korvac destroys eternity with the ultimate nullifier. It's a great story. I just ruined it for anybody, but that to me was a great. That and the Avengers. What if Thor and I forget who left the Avengers, and Iron Man and Giant Man had to take on the Hulk and Submariner in Avengers number 3.
Right.
That's a great story too. That's like What If number 2.
Right.
But the What If comics were hit or miss. Some of them I didn't have enough backstory to get them, but
yeah,
those had a big influence on me as well. I managed to get my hands on all the Ditko Doctor Strange stories. Loved them. That was big. And if there was a story writer that really moved me, it was probably Starlin.
Right.
One of my first memories was Marvel 2-in-1 and the Avengers Annuals with Thanos, the death of Adam Warlock and then the death of Thanos. Great. And then follow that by Dreadstar.
Right.
Me and Unruly Simeon always talk about Dreadstar. Great storytelling. And,
most of them stories. I've never read the Death of Captain Marvel. I kind of don't want to because I know he dies.
The Death of Captain Marvel I thought was okay. I didn't really like the Death of Captain Marvel that much. It was too much. Oh, we need to find a cure for cancer.
Yeah.
No. That was okay. I love the death of Adam Warlock and the death of Thanos. Those are earlier, and that's the whole Thanos saga. And they cross over from Captain Marvel, Marvel 2-in-1. If you don't have it, I can at least get you an omnibus of it. It's a good story. and then it all follows into the Infinity Gauntlet later.
There's so many stories. No one could bloody know them all. It's just like it's impossible.
Well, and if you asked me to lay out the story in detail, I would not be able to do so at this point. My neurons are not firing like they used to. You know what I mean?
No. Do you find it hard to remember nuances of stories? You kind of remember the big picture, and you go, "Well, how did they actually defeat them in the end?" You go, I don't know. I remember this was happening and these were summoned and so-and-so was doing this, but how did they actually beat them in the end? And half the time it's just like that little bit's kind of blank because I think it's more to do with the build-up, building it all up, building up the terror and the danger, the trepidation. And then when they finally finish it can be a bit of a damp squib sometimes how it actually ends. Yeah. But it's all about the ramping up of the tension kind of thing.
Yeah. And some of the comics I sent you were big on me too, were the Frank Miller Daredevil series with Elektra and Bullseye. That I read in India, and I did actually have most of it in India, amazingly enough, because if there's a place I couldn't quite get the whole run because my mother wasn't as good at buying all the runs as I would have been. So but I actually did manage to read that whole one. And I can't go without mentioning X-Men as being an amazing storyline that I loved as a child.
We didn't touch on what was your first character that you absolutely loved, or your first favorite character. Do you remember your first favorite? Like when you would tend to buy more than others, or if he was on a cover, you had to buy that comic.
I love the Submariner, as I called him. as I called him back then, the Submariner. For whatever reason, and I think it was because of this comic. So but he didn't have a comic of his own at this point. Yeah. So if I saw him, I had to get it. Interestingly, my brother, I told you we didn't like women comics, but we bought Superman, but for whatever reason, my brother and I were not big on the Superman. We liked Batman more. We liked the Legion of Superheroes more. Yeah. We liked the Justice League. We liked big group story stuff and a lot of the Marvel stuff. And I didn't appreciate Spider-Man until I got a little older and really enjoyed the stories. The Spider-Man. What really got me into Spider-Man was the series where he was trying to protect Madam Web from the Juggernaut.
All right.
And Peter Parker's trying to stop the Juggernaut. I mean, Spider-Man is. And he fails. And Juggernaut's actually not trying to kill her. He was told to get her, and he didn't realize if he disconnects her from her life support, she dies. So he accidentally kills her, and she was predicting the future that she was going to die. Oh. And then the next comic is Spider-Man trying to exact revenge on the Juggernaut.
Okay.
And it's a great story.
Even harder
don't have it. It's Bronze Age. It's late Bronze Age. I remember reading this as a kid and just being like, I love Spider-Man. Now, after that, I love Spider-Man. Before that, I got it in because I was a collector. I even back then I had this collector mentality, whether I read it or not. Right. I wanted that series. And since I told you when it came to buying comics, I was not made to work overly hard to get comics, to say the least. Yeah, that is Submariner, and I called Galactus. I called him Galacticus. I added a little Galacticus.
No, I was always saying dark seed instead of dark side. It was always dark seed for me every time I read it.
Dark seed.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a U-port. That's a different.
Yeah, no. To me, it made sense because he was like sowing the seeds of darkness in the universe, kind of thing. Like growing like. Well, but yeah, I was wrong apparently, and so it's just like it's too much like Star Wars Dark Side. But there you go.
And I got out of comics when I hit puberty a little bit. You know what I mean? How we are as guys, but what brought me back in was actually probably Frank Miller's Dark Knight, which I still have. I still have the comics, but this is a nice sort of omnibus of the 4 issues.
Yeah, I was kind of different because I didn't really like collect American comic books that much as a kid, only when I had a bit of pocket money. When I sort of started working and the comic shop opened near me, from 18 all the way up till, I don't know, 47 or something, I collected comics every month. And it was only really like probably a bit younger than that, but only when I sort of 2013, it was like they costed too much. I'm fed up of people getting killed off. There was various reasons that I stopped buying them. But but eventually, like I say, when I come back in 2018, I thought I'm not going to read the comic runs because they're so expensive. I'm just going to read old ones. You can get them like for a third of the price quite often, apart from keys, of course.
Now, I had something I wanted to show you, and now I can't find it. That was annoying. Yeah. My mother, again, I don't know that she actually looked at what she bought me. She bought me 2 compendiums of Frank Frazetta art when I was probably 9 years old. And there were some naked women in that, you know what I mean?
Oh, someone in the cheap seats is heckling you, mate. There's some guy, a Hialeah comic bro. It's just a clickbait video because Man Cave has no memory.
Yes, he's right. Mate. And I said a lot of this stuff on I was on with Hialeah, and Hialeah's probably heard half of this already. Yeah. if you already, but I had it in my hands, but it was 2 original from this. I still have them. They were like the originals that I had, Frank Frazetta art, and boy, did I love that. The Conan. I wasn't old enough to appreciate the female ones, but I really loved the Death Dealer and all the Conan and John Carter, Warlord of Mars pictures were just amazing. I remember
we got Epic magazine. My dad picked up Epic magazine for us, and that was quite adult as well. From when we
that was a little later.
There was a fair bit of nudity in there.
We got that in Heavy Metal. Sometimes heavy metal magazine. Epic was better though. Better stories, I think. I don't know.
And it was just like. And sometimes they'd have like some Boris Vallejo art kind of thing, like a center spread or whatever, and he'd be like, "Whoo!" This is in the days before the internet, when you didn't get to cast the cursory eye over the female frame that often. albeit drawn, but drawn very well.
Oh man. But progressing on, as I said, Dreadstar. In India, I also love Nexus and Badger. Did you ever have any of those comics?
No, like I say,
they were like
DC and Marvel was the only things I ever saw.
Yeah.
I think I picked up like a little run of Badger. I saw it going like 5 comics for like £3 or something in a shop.
Yeah.
I think it was one with a bullet hole in it. Is that Badger? I think that's one. Or
maybe
or something like that. I can't remember now. But yeah,
it was pretty brutal. And the first place I ever had a Judge Dredd comic was in India too. Judge Dredd. I remember thinking he was a little he followed the law a little too closely. I thought it was like, oh my God, the worst kind of bureaurat with the gun.
Exactly. Well, that's what he was. They're like we all sort of held him as a hero, but if you looked at the actual, he was just a bloody fascist kind of thing. Like you just
it's like this guy made a food that no one could resist. It was such a good food. He gets put in jail, and I'm just you went 5 miles above the speed limit. You're done, man.
You're talking about Uncle Ump's candy. Ump's candy is so good it's addictive.
He was a jerk.
They ended up sending him off in a spaceship because he was so nice. Everyone wanted the recipe, even robots who tasted it. Then later on,
that's right. So you remember what story I'm talking about? I remember reading that. I haven't read that since I was in India, but I remember that very clearly.
They really, with 2018, they really forget like something. And later on, some criminals went to this on the spaceship of Uncle Ump, kidnapped him, got the recipe off him, threw him off into space. And Ump's candies, like he's being sold underground, like from I want to buy some Ump's candy. You know what I mean? So the universe of
great.
is so well realized.
Yeah. And the other thing that of stories wise, I love the Sandman. That was when I started getting back into really reading the stories and getting into
the Neil Gaiman
and Neil Gaiman, and then I like Lucifer too. I don't hear a lot of people talking about that one, but
I've got that in trays. Lucifer, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have it. I just found the first one here in the trade, but I have the comics too.
Did you see the TV show of Lucifer?
I heard it wasn't any good compared to the comics, so
it was nothing like the comics really, but it was it was a bit of fun. If you bought it or watched it wanting it to be like the comic books, then you're crap out of luck. But like if you wanted to watch just for a bit of foolish kind of stuff, then it was decent for that. It was entertaining enough. But don't compare it to the comic books. You're making a mistake.
Now I would be remiss in not saying partly why I like Golden Age, not just because they're awesome and cool, and why wouldn't you like Golden Age?
Yeah, how did that?
Just like Knights of Old. I hate to refer Knights of Old so much, but I just watched it and I have a short-term memory. So, but my uncle, my uncle gave when I went to visit my family lives in New York City. My extended family, so I grew up in New Mexico. Yeah. But I remember visiting him, and he took me to a comic store that had amazing, 10-cent Paradise. But this actually did have Tech 38 on the wall there as which is a first appearance of Robin. And I remember thinking, holy cow. And seeing the price tag on it, I was like, wow, it's like $400 or something. Yeah. Which seemed for now, it's like obviously way more than that. And he gave me a few compendiums of Golden Age comics. And Steranko actually wrote like a history of comics which is an interesting read. He gave me that too. And I still have that. And I should have brought that up, but as I said, I was sort of last minute. But, anything that like this is just a heritage auction counter, but I would have things like this that would just have pictures of comics or whatever. And I would just go for those and look at the Golden Age covers, and like so many of these Golden Age covers before I ever had a Gerber guide or anything. I would just get my uncle gave me a few books of just Golden Age covers and about them, and it immediately just someone who loved comics and 10-cent comics being the most valuable, that immediately just always gave me a taste for that. And when I've been fortunate enough to be in a position to actually acquire a lot of these things, so
that's cool.
Yeah.
They just, I mean, do you have them all in slabs because they're so kind of like rare, so kind of valuable and delicate?
Yeah, that slab I broke open, that's a $30 book, even at a 9.8. But if I grab one of these Submariners over here, you know,
this is an old 40s.
It's an old book from the 1950s, and it would, you know, I may send it back to get reslabbed, and it would be a lower grade or whatever. But I mean, it's easier to present them, and it's easier to preserve them, is the way I look at it. And I can read them. There's plenty of ways to read the stories.
Yeah. But have you ever actually? But I mean, how many of you get to handle? It must be even more special to actually handle it. Well, it might be a bit nerve-wracking because you're worried about turning the pages and thinking you don't want to, I don't know, sneeze on them or something like that. I mean,
look great. I get a lot of them raw here. America's Greatest Comics. They're about to attack Tokyo. This is right after Pearl Harbor.
Yeah,
this is cool. Another one.
Yeah,
I do thrilling comic Schoenberg cover.
Would you go on to slab that, or would you keep it as it is?
Here we are. We have a thrilling comic Schoenberg.
Yeah,
let's
check it out. Full screen.
we got the splash page.
Yeah,
you know, comics are meant to be read. I am not. We got Doc Strange splash page, and so when I get a raw comic, I'm going to read it and I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Carefully. And this is interesting because although it's a racist depiction of this gentleman here, the inside is way less racist than a lot of comics. I've read a few of the Young Allies with Speedy. With Bucky. The way that the African-American character talks and everything's just a little rough. This guy actually kicks butt, is well, he's, I don't want to say well-spoken. That makes me sound like a jackass. Like that's something to be amazed about, but he's not depicted. He's not depicted completely in a terrible light, though the way he's drawn there is rough. But I wouldn't have known that except for I was actually reading it and going, okay, this is much better representation. I'm not saying there were issues back then, but that needed to be worked out. But so the answer is yes. When I get them, this is another one. It's a Hitler cover, big shot. He's punching Hitler and Hirohito here. It's a funny story. Like he tricks Hitler and he punches Hitler in the face, and Hitler goes and he puts him back in the bed, and then they has to hide. And it's just a weird.
Has Hitler got a glass jaw? I mean, Hitler's got a glass jaw, hasn't he?
Yeah. So I have a whole bunch of stuff. Eventually, I'll probably get them slabbed for preservation's sake, but it is nice to actually enjoy them. And there's a smell. There's a smell to a Golden Age comic that's different than other comics. Now,
because you obviously own a lot, but do you are you less reverential to them than you were when you first started collecting them? I imagine when you first got your old one, you were like, "Oh, okay."
It's hard. I will admit, I still can sit here and get in that state, like, "Holy crap, I can't believe." But it's a little harder. You're right. If you have a lot, you get a little less
blasé.
The first really, really big comic I ever got was X-Men #1 years ago, and I would just be in here. I'd just be amazed. I'm like, I have X-Men #1, and just that thought alone just blew my mind on a regular basis. So I guess like the crackhead would say, the first hit's like the biggest hit, and then it gets a little harder. But it's still amazing. Don't get me wrong.
You'll be shredding them and injecting them into your eye sockets next.
Now I need an Action Comics 1 to get my fix, man.
Oh man, that's terrible. And I've got a stack of Lois and Jimmy's from the 60s, like 1960, and to me that's and I must have gone through the covers, just looking at them like about 5 times. I've just gone through them again, just looking at them again. There's just something about them, and I feel like I've said it before, I feel kind of reverential, like when I'm looking at comics, like they're like special kind of little treasures,
Absolutely. And I don't have my More Fun comics out, but that's like so much rare, and I have it raw. Having that out is just incredible. Like the first Spectre comic stories, it's just it's pretty.
Wow. Is it?
Yeah. Let me.
What about your first Spectre?
No, I don't have the first. If I had the first one, I could slab right away. It's so expensive.
Yeah, I bet.
But
have you got a favorite comic? Is it possible to have a favorite comic with you got so many? Like, is it like
favorite? That's just too hard. Yeah,
I was like, you've got so many great ones. It's like,
that
your favorite child. All your children got to be your favorite.
Well, when it comes to my kids, that's easy. But like this, this is one of the original More Fun comics, and to some, the original owner, or maybe not the original owners, taped it, but these are really hard comics to come across, or not, and just to smell it and see that Spectre splash page like that. And I know you like Spectre.
I do like Spectre, and
they're interesting stories too.
Yeah. Is he as blinking badass in them as he is later on, where he's
just pretty badass. Yeah, I was just reading one, where he takes up all the trees and easily just waves them up, and like a guy throws a knife at him and it turns into the knife just appears on him as a necklace on him.
Oh,
he's like, good try, buddy.
Doesn't turn people into water or something like that, or like melt them like he does later on.
Yeah. And then you got Dr. Fate, original Dr. Fate stuff, and it's fun to read this like this. I mean, this isn't a high. If I had a really high grade one, I wouldn't be grabbing it like this. This with this tape on it, it's considered restored grade and whatever. But it's fun it's absolutely fun to just look through them, and you should. I do have slabs, but I enjoy, going and looking at the original stuff if I can. Yeah. But
have you got anything still on the horizon to pick up? Any particular target you're going for?
What's that?
Did you do a 2021 video of what you were aiming to get in 2021? Did you do one of them? I can't remember.
What I'm aiming to get?
Yeah. No. Have you got anything particular, or are you just like whatever comes up?
I have a working list of things I don't have, and if I have an opportunity and can do it, then I get it. I don't usually say, "Oh, I have to get this specific comic." That's just too hard, and it makes it like and especially there's some Silver Age comics I was interested in, but suddenly they've gotten much more expensive, so I'll wait it out. And if they don't ever go down in price, maybe I'll bite the bullet. But if they do, then I'll. I try not to buy comics that are on the peak. I can't say I've never done that. I've definitely done that.
Yeah. But it's the trouble with comics. You just don't know when they're going to be going up, Like I was trying to get DC Comics Presents run. I've just found out there's another one in there that's now becoming a bit of a key. I think it's because there's a Black Adam movie coming. And this one's got Black Adam on it. So it seems to I think it's gone up in price lately.
Sometimes even the comics that aren't the first appearance start getting more experience. Yeah. Do you have the one where do you have the first New Teen Titans, the 22? I think
I bought that from the shop around the corner from my dad's. That's one I bought back in the day.
Yeah. So that was a good one to pick up. My original of that, I actually AOK'd that to either Mindshift or I had 3 copies of it, but I had the one I bought off the stand, and I sent that to somebody in the community. I can't remember who now.
Never mind. Yeah. I'm sure they remember.
Yeah. Well, I gave you my original Greyman. I gave you my original I think the first Elektra. Did I give you that? That's the one I bought. That's the one that one I didn't. That one I had to rebuy after. I take it back because I bought that. I originally was sent that in India, and I had to re-get it. Right. When I got back.
Think you gave me...
true. So it's truly not my original one. I apologize.
Oh, so
but it was so long ago. I bought it.
Death, I think, and the death.
What's that?
I think you gave me the first appearance and her death.
Yes.
Both ends of the spectrum. She wasn't around that long, was she?
No, but she didn't stay dead. So
no.
The only person who's ever really stayed dead is Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, has he come back?
Yeah, Flash and Green Lantern stayed dead for quite a while, but they got better. There's still a chance. There's still a chance for Captain Marvel to come back. And they'll probably bring him back, and it turns out he was never dead all along. He was dead.
Yeah,
for
it'll be some alternate universe thing or something. Sort of like, did you watch WandaVision yet, Greyman?
No, I haven't got. I'm not sure what channel it's on, but it's not.
It's Disney Plus. It's Disney Plus. Oh, I won't say nothing then, but
no, I'm not paying for it.
I just saw the first 6 episodes in the last 2 days. 3 days.
Right. Yeah, I've heard people saying it's pretty good. But like I try and watch them when I get a chance to watch them. If it comes onto a channel that I've got that I'm paying for, then I'll watch them. Or when I can watch for free, I'll watch them. But there's so many channels now. It's impossible to
how many streaming channels are there? It's unreal.
I know, yeah. I've got Netflix and I've got Amazon Prime, whatever it's called.
Yeah, I think that's enough. That's enough. I would
try and stick with what's on those channels and hope that one day one of the things I want to watch will come to that channel. But yeah, I've given up with trying to keep up with them all. But I do like them all, actually, because I'm kind of like quite open-minded when it comes to superhero stuff. Because I
forgot about this. This was a comic that really, I love Gru, man.
Yeah.
I have a whole stack of these I gave to my kids, and I was just wandering around looking for stuff.
Yeah.
And I saw this sitting on the table, so...
I've got
Sergio Aragones was a very brilliant, mad artist and writer.
Still going, is he? Still going, is he not?
I don't know. So he did a lot of stuff for Mad Magazine, and then he did the Gru here. And
I used to have a few Mad magazines back in the day, Mad and Cracked. I picked up a few of those.
Yeah. And Fuerto, his dog, looks like I had an Australian red heeler, and he looks like an Australian red heeler. It's like it was almost like the dog I own. They're pretty clever dogs.
A few Gru, not too many of the Marvel ran, a few later ones of the Marvel ran, and I got when he went to Image, I got quite a lot of when he was with Image for a while. But
was Gru on Image? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, little Image run. I'm sure it was.
Yeah, the oldest I have is the basically these original ones when up until the 90s, sometime in the 1990s.
Yeah, and didn't Mark Evanier have something to do with it as well? He was like the editor or something like that, or I'm sure he used to write the letters page or something. Or was he still answer the letters? I think.
Who was that?
Now. Mark Evanier. Sure, his name was always associated with Sergio Aragones in the Gru books.
Marcus McLaurin.
No, maybe later on. Then maybe the ones I've got have got him in it, or maybe I'm confusing.
No, maybe. Oh yeah, Mark Evanier.
Yeah, what does he do? Is he just the editor or something like that? Or
he's the gladiator.
The gladiator. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, you didn't know that? The gladiator.
Yeah. Oh, here you go. Apparently, Evanier helps with the dialogue. Apparently.
Yeah, those guys got to. There you go.
Yeah, I always remember that name from being associated. I don't know why I remember that now. I think he's done his own books as well, and I think he used to write into lots of letter pages.
Yeah, I have no recollection of that name whatsoever, so you've just educated me. I'm happy I know Sergio Aragones, and I think I even pronounce it almost correctly. So
it's not how I pronounce it.
But it's actually Aragones, because the accent's over the last E.
Well, okay, I always say Aragones, but yeah. Yeah,
well, that's about as good as that's the proper pronunciation, truly.
Yeah, and when it comes to artists, like I know the 2000 AD artists; those are the ones that I knew because there was only like 4 pages, and it would always say on the first page who did everything. But on the superhero books, I don't know, I just passed through that.
It's only years later. Years later, after seeing so many Gil Kane comics, then I finally go, okay, that's what Gil Kane looks like. Then I can go, oh yeah, that's Gil Kane. That's Gil Kane. Same with Kirby. I mean, Kirby was probably the guy I recognized quickest. He's very distinct. But and Starlin has a look. Jim Starlin to me has a very
I think I could probably recognize Kirby and Ditko possibly, but ones like Brian Bolland who did 2000 AD and like Kevin O'Neill, Carlos Esquerra is one of my favorites. They didn't do an awful lot of DC, but Carlos Esquerra is probably my favorite artist. He did Striking Dog and he did Judge Dredd originally.
I mean, now that I pay attention, I love Neil Adams. I love Aparo, even I appreciate Infantino, Murphy Anderson, Kurt Swan, art, all that stuff, all those DC. I know you're more of a DC guy, right?
Well, I started off as like both, really. I was collecting both. But for some reason, Marvel just started to annoy me. I started getting annoyed at Spider-Man for being so angsty all the time and never resolving any storylines.
And this is from the 1990s?
Yeah, and in the 90s.
To me, the 1990s, Marvel got really poor writing at some point. I agree with you. I was buying it just out of habit but not really enjoying it. I was finding I was just flipping through it, but I loved the Justice League.
Yeah,
I loved Sandman. I loved Legion of Superheroes with Ian Geffen.
Right.
When it was darker, you know, it wasn't so bright. Keith Geffen, yeah. Did you like that series?
I've got some of them. Yeah, I've
very well written. It's like it's an edgier Legion of Superheroes vibe.
Quite a few runs, doesn't there, of the Legion of Superheroes? It's hard to
but it was. But I agree with you. At some point, DC writing was much more. So the Vertigo titles were amazing. I loved everything Vertigo.
Probably about 93 or something like that. 93. Captain America was one of my favorite characters from Marvel. I always used to, and then suddenly over the course of about 3 or 4 months, it was like, this is getting really boring. This is like, I'm not liking it. I don't even like the art. The covers aren't. Some of the art seemed to change. The covers seem to change. Maybe even paper quality. I'm not sure. And it was just like, you know, I'm gonna quit Marvel. I'll go full DC. And I've kind of been more DC than Marvel ever since.
And they regret it because they thought it was only their characters that would keep them, but when they lost McFarlane and all those guys to Image, their writing really took their art and writing went down at that point. That was a big blow. Yeah. But even Image comics were a little wacky too. But I liked some of those original Image titles. Yeah, I
started on a few of them, but then I kind of soon got
I started off early on those, and then I dropped off on comic. At around 1995, that's when I stopped collecting for many years and just sort of went out of the whole thing.
Yeah, first Image. The one I collected the longest was Savage Dragon.
Yeah,
I got like 50 maybe of them, something like that.
I remember liking Savage Dragon, Spawn, and I liked Supreme for a while. That was just, he was like a all powerful type of dude.
I got a few different runs from that, like Freak Force. It was kind of tied in with Savage Dragon. I had about 20 of them. I think that was the full run, and. There's an alien guy. I can't remember what it's called, maybe Vindicate or something like some kind of alien guy. But like my mate had Spawn. I had one mate who would go. I used to read his, but like we kind of never saw each other after a while. And he sold all his comics. And I spoke to him, and he said, "Oh yeah, I sold all my comics." I was like, "Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you come to me? I would have bought them off you." Oh, what can you do?
Oh, that's annoying. Yeah. What brought me back into collecting or at least interested in comics was getting that Lucifer trade. Because I would stop if I saw a comic shop, I would stop in, even if I wasn't a collector, just to see what the hell was going on. Yeah. And I was just talking with the guy, and I'm like, "Oh, I love Sandman." He's like, "Well, have you ever read Lucifer?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Check this out." So I grabbed that, and then I also picked up an Invincible trade, like the first stories of Invincible. And I remember going, "Whoa, this is great!" So I started. I started buying.
Invincible. There's a TV show coming of that soon, apparently. I heard there's a TV show.
I saw the trailer for it. Yeah.
Oh, right. I've not seen the trailer.
They have a trailer for it, and it's just an original take on superheroes. It's very if you like superheroes, it's just a different
twist of the Superman story almost. As well, isn't it?
It's just and Kirkman does a good job writing.
Yeah. Talking of Sandman, and Golden Age, did you ever like the Sandman Mystery Theater run? That was a Vertigo run. Did you get that one?
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of my favorites. That one is great.
Absolutely, I love
great run.
Death, Sandman, and I've even read Neil Gaiman's, most of his novels.
All right.
Do you read books too?
I used to read loads, but like I just kind of stopped a few years ago. I just can't get my head around books anymore. I don't know what it is, but I just kind of
short attention span.
Yeah, well, no, I never used to. I used to like devour books. I could never remember not being able to read. Like as long as I can remember, I've always read. And I always just go to school, and in playground, I'd be reading books in the playground, and everyone would call me a bookworm. Whatever. Yeah, bookworm. Like it was an insult, and I would
I attribute
books.
Going to boarding school in India, there was no television at all. Yeah. So I read Stephen King, Piers Anthony, Tolkien, Shannara series, and loved all that stuff. Absolutely. The Wizard of Earthsea. You ever read that one?
No, I don't think so. No.
Oh man,
I used to get like fantasy anthologies, like Mammoth Book of Fantasy, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And George R. R. Martin, I read that right when it came out, before he was so famous and popular.
All right. I actually did a video just recently going through my books. Actually, went through, but a lot of them. It wasn't like really great because I sold a lot of my books on eBay a few years ago, like probably 10 years ago now. I sold a load. I was thinking they're all gathering dust. I probably won't read them again. So I ended up selling everything apart from the ones that I had really sort of close connections to, kind of my fighting fantasy and my Sven Hassel war books and a few ones that I read as a kid.
Well, right now I'm trying to read. I'm reading a lot of comics, but I'm reading more. I don't want to say highbrow, but I'm reading like Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. It's like a Russian author, you know. It makes you really want to smoke a cigarette and have something to eat because this guy's in like a Siberian gulag, not able to eat anything, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna pig out and have a cigarette.
That sounds like a delightful read. Life affirming kind of.
It's like a 200 pages. It'll make you feel better about your existence if you feel bad. So you can see why I chose dystopian as my cover theme.
Right, yeah. You like the happy-go-lucky stuff.
Yeah. No, I do. That's why I read comics. So I try to read. My next one is the Gulag Archipelago, which is
sounds delightful.
It's the same author, but I'm reading the abridged version, which is about 800 pages. The actual long version is 2,000 pages.
I think I'm just like theorizing here, but maybe I'm kind of like going into not wanting to have like depressing kind of stuff. That's why I'm enjoying the Lois Lane and the Jimmy Olsen's now, because just like
I love that too. I agree with you. You want to read for entertainment, and I read those things because I find it interesting and it entertains me. But it is a little bit of a
a bit of a trek, slog.
Yeah, it's like reading a bad Sandman, you know, really when he's in a negative space. Some of those comics, but Gray Man, thanks for having me on, man. I have to.
You have to
go grab some grub.
Yeah,
I was getting the eyeball from my wife. Like, when are you going to get done with this?
That's cool. Well, nice chatting to you anyway, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Now, I was thinking that you've come on Cover Sling, I don't know how many weeks in a row now, but other than hello and goodbye at the end of the show, we've never actually had a chance to properly talk one-on-one, if you know what I mean. So so thanks for coming, and cheers. Tune in next week, everyone.
Thank you very much, Grayman. Cheers, man. Thanks, chat, for coming on in.
For Cover Slingers.
I'm so bad at following the chat during these things. So I feel bad.
Cheers, Hoosier, for the super chat, and we're gonna go now. Cheers, guys. See you next week. See you tomorrow.